Yeah, well, I mean, I've played G&L since probably about '85. So, they made a kind of reissued the G&L that I play with a couple of modifications that I'd done to it. Which one was syncing the tremolo system into the body a little bit, changing up the pickup, kind of a Frankenstein combination with a Floyd Rose nut instead of the Kaler. And anyway, that's the way the guitars worked for me. So they put it back out, and this last year, I think we released the Superbird as well, to be able to kind of give a little more options to some guitar players, because it's a kind of a limited guitar. I mean, it's just one volume knob, one pickup, one tremolo. If you're not much of a tremolo player, it's not really that much use to you. So the Superbird's kind of nice because it kind of provides different pickup configurations, and something that's a little bit more standard instead of the whammy bar guitar.
So what pickups are you running in those?
I think we're using the Rock City ones right now. I think the guy's out of Detroit that makes those pickups. Yeah.
What do you like about those?
Well, it sound pretty good. It seemed to work. I mean, for years I was a Jeff Beck, Seymour Duncan guy. I mean, for 20 years I used those pickups. So we made a switch a few years ago and tried these out, and it seemed to work in conjunction with the amps. Which are great. They're made by Dave Friedman, and we have a model. That's my model of that amp. The mod that he did for me, and we're going to release that, I think, next year. So it'll be kind of cool. We're trying to figure out what to call it. But I love the amp. It's great. Pretty much anything that I've played, including the Bogner amps, which I played for many years and still record with. They're all basically based off of kind of a hot rodded Marshall anyway. So the Friedman is kind of in that same ballpark, and I think I've got a probably I've had some good amp setups over the years, but the one that I have right now is really good. Yeah, running two heads, one a little cleaner than the other. It's a switchable channel, so you can give it a little more pop. It's got a nice clean channel to it. We have a lot of tunes that are kind of like mid-tempo, kind of jangly tunes, and a lot of those songs I record with an AC30. So that's the kind of sound I was looking to kind of get on a clean channel, and over a period of a couple of years, we dialed that in a little bit more each time, and I think Dave's got it nailed now. So it's nice. It's got a real kind of a similar to an AC30 kind of cleaner tone to it on the clean channel, and it'd be kind of interesting to put it out, make a few amps and put it out there, see if people dig it. I love it.
So what about your original G&L Rampage? You still bring that out?
Yeah, I mean, it's out here. I've pretty much retired them. Not necessarily by choice, but there's a kind of a hairline crack from the neck all the way through the body on the original one, the first one I bought, and it's still pretty solid. But I throw my guitars around a bit, and it's just going to take the one wrong shot, and that thing's going to come apart. I've been playing the newer G&Ls, which took a little bit of getting used to because they weren't quite like the old ones. But I like how the new ones play. They're a little heavier, which definitely wears on your back a little bit more. But I mean, it's a solid guitar. It's what I've always liked about it. It's nothing fancy, there's plenty of fancier, cooler design guitars, but it's just a meat and potatoes guitar, and that's always always felt comfortable for me to play from the get-go. So, I'm pretty much the only rock guy that plays them. So mostly it's like country or session guys or blues or something, but no.
I noticed you got a couple of baritone guitars out as well.
Yeah.
What are you using those for?
Yeah, always been a fan of baritone, and there's always a portion of each record that's got some baritone on it. It's something I've been using from the first record. Trick I learned from Dave Jordan on the first record. Kind of beefing up choruses and highlighting certain parts with a different different tones and different voice. And I've continued to do that over the years. The Jerry Jones are great. They have a nice clean sound, and the Giffen was hand built for me. He came down when I was recording Degradation Trip. He came down to the studio, and I was talking to him about wanting to get a gold top baritone, and he's like, "I'll build you one." And so I think to my knowledge, I think there's only two of them. I think Nancy Wilson might have one, and I have the other. That guitar is great. And I mean, the single that's out right now, Voices, is totally baritone. It's actually written. The bass of the song is on baritone. So yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So talk to me about your sort of effects rig. I know you work closely with your tech to get the switching sorted. So how do you decide what goes in that?
Yeah, it's a co-pilot situation. I hats off to guys who run their own rig and switch their effects and all that stuff. If I was just playing guitar, I would totally do that. But I have so many vocal commitments and turning 2-3 things on and off at the same time and hitting a vocal cue or in and out of a solo. I don't have time for it. I prefer working with somebody in the co-pilot seat running the rig. So it's pretty simple. I mean, you took a look at it. I mean, it's got your basic effects. There's nothing fancy out there. The only thing I'm using a whole lot of is my Crybaby. We got some chorus here and there, a little delay. Maybe a couple of things, rotovibe once in a while, once in a while we'll whip the phaser on. It's kind of something that we dial in, and depending on the songs we play. If we haven't played stuff for a while, we've been touring all year, so we spent a lot of time together, Craig and I, and so we have pretty much everything dialed. We just play through songs, we listen back to stuff, try to recreate, patches or sounds for songs. Mostly it's getting the guy familiar with you, as familiar with you as you are with your own stuff anyway. And at that point, which we're well past that now, it's just about kind of adjustments. You know what I mean? Maybe we're not. You make just little adjustments as you go. There's not enough chorus on that, I don't think, anymore. Maybe there's too much delay on this part, or getting too much of a beat on the end of the song. Or whatever. You just make little adjustments. So. You kind of dial it in for a month or two before you hit the road, and then you just kind of go from there. I like working with Craig. Craig's great. He's one of the best techs I've ever had, if not the best.
That's great.
Yeah.
I noticed you brought the talk box back in.
Yeah.
Not something you traditionally used on stage. So what prompted that?
Well, it's an effect that it's hard to put up and put down. Unless you're gonna use it a lot, where it's up there all the time, it's kind of a pain in the ass to have that tube up there. So, that song in particular, it's great to have it. It's fun. It's totally fun, and you just can't really recreate that. But there's two tracks on that song on Man of the Box. One of them is a talk box, and one is a Crybaby, and they're cut separately. So I can replicate it without it, and it's just fine. But it's nice having it back in, and it's also something that putting it on, taking it off for that one song, it's a little bit of a hassle, So I think that's probably why I let it go. But we've got a really good crew, so they just run out there, tap it on, and then pull it off after the song. But yeah, it's a fun effect. Check my brain and again and grind and down in a hole. That's all Les Paul stuff. Yeah.
So what do you like of the Les Paul over the G&L?
It's just a different tool, man. Hammer and a screwdriver. They're two different tools that are necessary, and you use a different tool for a different job or whatever. Those are only two guitars I've really kind of regularly played. I use a lot of different guitars for different tones in the moment and writing and when shit happens or whatever. And live, I mean, it's pretty much a 50-50 mix between the G&Ls, the Les Pauls, and then a little bit of Telecaster pop, kind of mixed in there, I guess.
And I noticed you got a couple of 5150 cabs on stage. Are those for just monitoring, or? Yeah.
Part of running in-ear monitors for a guitar player is you lose a lot of that kind of warm, rich sound of the room, and it kind of sucks. It's like it's a sacrifice that I kind of had to make because I wanted to give myself the best chance possible to be able to sing the best that I can. So that's really number one. And that's odd, coming from a guitar player's standpoint, but I realize I sing so much, and since we've gotten back together, my role has increased even more than it was before. So, working with Will the way that we work, that's got to be fucking right. So, we try to give ourselves the best opportunity to be able to hear ourselves and kind of pitch correctly. I mean, it's live, but we both take it very seriously, and he works really hard at it, and so do I. Try to get better, and we're a vocal band, and not many bands do that shit, without tracks, and and do it as well as we do, and so you got to take a hit a little bit. You don't have your wall of speakers behind you, or some monitors bring it up to you. You're listening to your guitar through a little hole that's like this big, so it's just not going to sound that massive, So it was a complaint I had, and Craig actually suggested getting a couple of Ed's cabs or some 212s to use as off of the live rig to be able to kind of give me a little bit of kind of a little cone of warmth there, a little circle of warmth, and that's been helping a lot. They're barely on. They're just for a little bit of feedback and just a little bit of body kind of coming my way and not interfering with the vocals or whatever. So, but yeah, it's a nice addition. I dig it. I wish I had done that before, but I'm glad we got that dialed in. It's a good rig,
The Chris from Framus, Warwick in the States just looked me up and said, would you like to try some of our guitars? And I thought, why not? I mean, so he sent a couple around, and at first, it was sort of like, okay, whatever, you know what I mean? And then I A-B'd it against, I happen to have my number one Les Paul at home at the time, so I was able to do a direct comparison between the two, and the first one that he sent that I played and really liked was one of the Diablo models. It was a Sunburst Diablo, which you may have seen in my rig here. Not the black one, but the sort of honey burst one, and that was the first one that I played at my house, and I just thought, God, this is really cool. It's actually hanging in there really well with the Les Paul. It's a little brighter, but it's got its own thing, but it could fulfill a very similar role to the one that has been played by the Gibsons for years now, and so I was pleasantly surprised, and I let him know, and he just started sending more, and So now the black Diablo that you definitely saw, that is in the photos that we've taken today, that's become like the number one Framus, and all the standard tuning songs that we do where I'm playing guitar are done with that guitar now on stage, and I'm really pleased with them. They've sent me a few other things too, and they're their top-notch guitars are as good as anything that I've played. The workmanship, the selection of woods, the quality of the woods they're using. When you get up into the Diablo Supremes and all that, they also have a model, I think it's called the Pantera, that they sent me, that they actually, even put my name in the fretboard and stuff, which was nice. And but those guitars they hang with anything in terms of build and in terms of tone. So that's kind of what prompted it. It's been a really beautiful relationship so far. Really happy with them.
So any plans to work on a William DuVall signature model?
Possibly. I mean, I don't really feel like I've done enough to kind of warrant it. I mean, even though I've had a really long career, it's mostly been in the underground, and I think I just feel like I have more to do before I can think about something like that. It's not that I would object to the idea, but it would take some time also to really consider what I would want in a signature model, because for so many years I played whatever was available and affordable, and I tended to use guitars that weren't so high end, they weren't so beautiful, and something you'd feel like you'd have to pamper, because I just wasn't in that environment. I was always a really violent player, and I was usually in pretty violent situations, so it just didn't make any sense to play a guitar that could be a piece of furniture in your house. I used to play Dan Armstrongs because they were made of plexiglass, and they were the toughest guitars you could have. I played a lot of other different guitars that weren't made of wood, like for a while I went through a Jerry Jones phase, those Dan Electro sort of replicas that are just better than Dan Electros. Lots of different things that I've used, but eventually I kind of went around the world to get across the street, to the Les Paul and everything else that most people have been using for a million years. It works for this band, and obviously works for lots of different situations, so I don't know. I mean, I've always loved Telecasters. There's just so many different niches that different guitars can fill, and I'm just not sure how I would combine how I would first of all prioritize the needs of something that would go in a signature model for me, and then what I would be willing to like not compromise on. Like, it's got to have this kind of pickup, or it's got to have 2 volume controls, or it's got to have just one. I mean, I just am not sure yet what would be the end all be all for me. I'm not sure such a thing even exists.
So you're still bringing your Les Pauls out on tour, though? Yeah,
I got the Les Pauls and the Framuses, and I got my Gibson Hummingbird acoustic, and there's probably a few other things in there that I haven't played in a long time that I've even forgotten about. But like I have a Telecaster somewhere, actually, that Sean Kinney gave me years ago, and then I have some things I keep at home. Lots of different things I keep at home. The Les Pauls are for all the drop D songs that I play guitar on. So Last of My Kind, Stone, Hollow, those kind of things. And then the Framus is for things like everything from Check My Brain to No Excuses to Phantom Limb, to Got Me Wrong, which I also play a lot of solos on.
Yeah. So is your number one out on tour with you?
Actually, that's at home right now, because I got a couple more Gibsons that hang very well, and with what the number one used to do, and so that's at home right now. I mean, I got it to where they're almost interchangeable. Like I wouldn't be able to, like, oh, that's definitely, like I got a couple that are as good as one another, and so I was, I've been able to leave the number one at home for this tour.
And what about the Gibson Hummingbirds? You got a couple of those for the
yeah. The true vintage things that they're doing, which is kind of like the VOS for acoustics. It's they call it true vintage when it's acoustics. And out here I have the Hummingbird, and it's been great, man. The thing's been around the world, and it's it always performs well. It's hard to take an acoustic guitar and throw a pickup in it and actually get it to sound good. You know what I mean? You'd think as long as many decades as we've been trying to do this, you'd think it would just be dialed and a no-brainer. But obviously with acoustic guitars, you're dealing with a pretty temperamental animal to begin with, and what's coming, whether they were having a good day at the company, and what kind of wood and what tree and what part of the tree and all that stuff, and just how it's all coming together, and then you slap a pickup in it. I mean, there are guitars that sound fantastic acoustically, but if you try to put any kind of pickup, whether it's a piezo or a sound hole pickup or both or whatever, it just goes to hell. And then there are some that don't sound that good acoustically, that if you slap a pickup in it, suddenly somehow it comes to life. And then there are some where you can get best of both worlds, and with this Hummingbird I have the best of both worlds, and so it's pretty great.
Oh, nice. So talk to me about your amp setup. I noticed you had 3 heads down there.
Yeah.
What are you using those for?
Well, I've got the Framus. I've got the Friedman. it gets confusing, all these FR names, man. No, I've got the Friedman and the Bogner kind of working together in a sense, going through. They're each going through their own cabinet. So when we're doing the heavier things, like it's Stone or Phantom Limb or Check My Brain, anything, more on the heavy side, it's the Friedman and the Bogner together, each through their own cabinet, which are usually, sometimes they're in ISO boxes. This tour, I think we're putting them in the hallway or something. And I think it works really well. I mean, really either the Uberschall Bogner or the Friedman those are both great standalone amps. I think what Friedman's doing is actually, I got to give it up. It's the best hot rodded style Marshall that I've ever come across. It's kind of like the amp that a lot of people, myself included, have probably been waiting 30 years or more for. You just put all the stuff that you want in one amp, but it's still really simple. There's not a million knobs on it, and it sounds amazing. Like it sounds like the best Marshall you ever played on its best day, when the air is right and the tubes are right, everything's just right, but it sounds like that all the time. So it's killer. And and then of course Bogner's been around a long time, and they do what they do really well. And for the kind of low end sort of chunk that you need in this group, they're very good. So I figured, even though you could use one or the other, let's just use them both together, and kind of EQ each so that one is covering the areas that the other's not, and it's great, And then for the sort of my clean sound, like the closest that I get to clean, like something like the beginning of Brewster or something like that, I think that's just the Uberschall clean channel through the effects, the pedal thing that you probably saw. And then for the semi-dirty kind of stuff, like any of our sort of strummy songs, like No Excuses or Got Me Wrong or Your Decision, Voices, anything like that, where it's the sort of Tom Petty-ish, kind of thing, where I'm doing Mike Campbell's style fills and stuff along with chording and everything. That's the Matchless C30 head, and that's going through one of the cabs as well. So I've got like a head bone switcher thing. I think it's the head bone. I always get those mixed up, but those great units that they make that allow you to, you know, either have one cab with two heads or have just switching amps, like, you know, if you switching between amps either through the same cabinet or through each with their own cabinet, or having both on, that kind of thing. I think it's the head bone that switches them, where you can. So I've got the matchless wired up to one of the 412s, and I think that also goes through a Palmer speaker emulator as well, so that the sound man can blend it in however he wants to tailor it to the room. But it's a kill. I mean, the C30 is just amazing. I've used those for many years now, and they're just, that was a benchmark as well. I think when those guys came out, Samson and you know, they kind of hot rodded the Vox, made their own thing, and it really is its own thing. Like the C30, you can either do kind of a Voxy thing, or you can do the matchless thing, which is what I usually use it for. So what Friedman is to the Marshall amp, I think Matchless has done it for the Vox amp. And they also make great amps with EL34s as well. And I mean, they do a lot of different, but I think that EL84 C30 is like, that's their flagship model for a reason, because it just does something that nobody else can do, and it's killer. It's really, really good. Sometimes I'll kick a overdrive on for solos when I'm using that amp, but it just sounds balls, man. Like, you know. Yeah.
So talk me through your effects setup as well. I know that your tech does the switching.
Yeah, my effects thing, it's just that what is it, the TC thing, and you know, the truth is, I never really used one of those until I was in this band and had a tech to run all that stuff. I always was kind of like, whatever I'm using, I'm running it, it's on the floor or whatever, and I never used very much in the first place. But you know, now that, you know, we sort of need to have this little NASA setup off the stage, you know, because there's too much, just wouldn't be practical with both Cantrell and me running around, and we're also tap dancing on pedals and stuff. He's got his wah out there because he's got to have that, but other than that, if we could find a way to not have that on the floor, we probably would, you know. So for me to do it also would just really make it unworkable. So we both have our guys doing a lot of switching off stage, and because of that, they tend to come up with stuff that they think will be good, and then you check it out and you go, yeah, that is good, or, you know, take a little edge off of that one, or a little more of the reverb, or a little less of the reverb, or, you know. So to tell you the truth, I mean, like the clean channel that I use on the Bogner, that's usually run through a little bit of chorus, a little bit of verb. That's all coming out of the TC. But other than that, you know, there's not really too much going on effects wise. It's usually the amp doing the work for me, and we use the TC a lot of times just as kind of a switcher unit, so that we can switch channels between the amps, or we can I should say, so we can switch like channels within the amps, you know what I'm saying? Like, we use it to switch the channels in the Bogner, or to switch the channels in the Friedman, and you know, occasionally, like a few weeks ago, my tech just came up with this idea of when we come out of the solo section in Stone and the riff comes back in again, where it's just the one guitar. Well, I do that, and he's like, you know, what if we put like an octave on there? So he put this thing on there to put a low octave on there, just for that one little part. And I was like, yeah, cool. So those are the things we use the TC for when we use it. But other than that, I'm not as much of a, you know, reverbs and stuff, a little bit of delays maybe on like solos, like Phantom Limb. He'll hit the thing where he'll hit the button where it's the both amps on their most gained out stage, Friedman and Bogner working as hard as they can, with a little bit of like a delay on there. And it's pretty straightforward, you know, pretty straightforward stuff. And then again, like I said, a little overdrive when I'm using the matchless on the jangly songs and like need to do like solos and Got Me Wrong or something. He kicks on the overdrive. Now he probably talked you through this because I honestly couldn't tell you what overdrive it is because they've been sending them people. There's these great boutique companies now for effects pedals, and just like there are for amps, and they send this stuff, and he's just like, man, I got the guy from so and so here, and he wants you to try this other, throw it in there, you know, and then over the course of a week or something, if we got 2 or 3 different pedals that have been sent, you know, maybe I'll make a comment on, I think I like that one a little bit better, but it's sort of like I couldn't even tell you which one it is right now off the top of my head. But suffice it to say that a lot of cats out there making some really cool stuff, man. After all these years, I'm still figuring it out. Like, it's just, that's what's so great about doing this, man. Like, you know, you can be doing it your whole life and still be fascinated by something, you know, a plank of wood with 6 strings stretched across it. You can still be fascinated by some amplifier, you know, the design is basically like 50 years old. You know what I mean? They've been making these Marshall style, I mean, the Marshall's just it was a glorified basement, and then it, you know, went into its own thing. But we're still sitting here 50 years later just freaking out on it. And I mean, that's a pretty cool thing, you know. And so, I mean, I'm a gearhead. I just don't know a lot about what I'm using out here on this tour.